Shalom, shalom. Call hello Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushua, Bahashim Rakakwadash. Alright, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Alright, who through the Holy Spirit continue to teach us His truth and wisdom. Alright, this is Naaman with the DC camp. And once again, alright, more truth is coming to the forefront. Alright, in this particular story, it talks about not only was the Underground Railroad to the north, all right, but the other direction. So it says a chapter in U.S. history often ignored: the flight of runaway slaves to Mexico. All right, and it says today, and this is a gentleman here. He's in his 90s. He's blind. All right, got white hair. I believe this was 1937. So yeah, he was he was around a long time. It says today, as Black History Month comes to a close, we want to explore a chapter of U.S. history that is often overlooked. It's about the escape of enslaved people from American South to Mexico. It says now most of us are familiar with the Underground Railroad, the network of people who helped those fleeing slavery to escape north. Harriet Tubman played a key role in that effort, of course, and today the federal government is once again making plans to put her portrait on the front of the $20 bill. Why? Why now? Got to ask those questions. What fucking good? Why? All right, and why her? How many people might have been concerned, I mean not concerned, but considered more worthy than her that are not? Just saying. It says thousands of enslaved people fled plantations to make their way to the Rio Grande, which was for them a river of deliverance. All right. It says as part of a federal project to document slave life in America, a former enslaved man named Felix Haywood was interviewed in 1937. He was 92 at the time, blind, white-haired, and weather-beaten. Again, this gentleman here. All right. It says Mr. Haywood was born into slavery. As a young man, he tended cattle and sheep for ranchers around San Antonio, Texas. All right. This is what he recollected about the notion of escaping. His words are read here by an actor. All right, so let's do a little something here. Let's see. So he was born in 1845. All right, think about that. I had made statements earlier, not in this video, of course, but I used to think that, 100 years is really nothing. We think of as it relates to our lifespans, and then you consider the days of Noah and before him. You're like, okay, that seems more, I see it. All right. But because of sin, these bodies that we have, but still some people live, when you consider today, long time, and a lot of them are not, because let's face it, when you think of elderly people now, from 70s on up at least, you think of them being all, decrepit and, shriveled up and bad health, and that's not necessarily the case for everybody. All right. Continuing on with this, it says, and this is an actor saying his or reenacting his interview. It says, sometimes someone will come along and try to get us to run up north and be free. There was no reason to run up north. All we had to do was to walk south, and we'd be free as soon as we crossed the Rio Grande. Burnett. Felix Haywood never escaped, but he knew slaves who did. And it says, in Mexico, you could be free. They didn't care what color you was, black, white, yellow, or blue. Hundreds of slaves did go to Mexico and got on all right. And it says, from the 1830s up to emancipation, an estimated 3,000 to 5,000 enslaved people fled south and crossed over to free Mexican soil. That's far fewer than the estimated 30 to 100,000 enslaved persons who crossed the Mason-Dixon line to reach free northern states and Canada. The saga of the other Underground Railroad isn't nearly as celebrated, but it should be. Enslaved sailors and stowaways from New Orleans and Galveston jumped ship in Mexican ports. Slaves drove wagons of cotton to market in Brownsville and then slipped across the muddy river to Matamoros, Mexico, but their main mode of transportation was horseback, traversing the vast feral stretches of South Texas down to the border. The midday sun is brilliant here in this forgotten cemetery on the edge of Texas in the Rio Grande Delta. All right, Roseanne Baca Garza, and that's right here. Let me get to another article here. Wait a minute. Oh, here it is. And this is her here. All right, in the black. It says, a Borderlands historian stands with Olga Weber Vasquez at the grave of the latter's great-great-grandfather, the abolitionist. There they go, claiming credit. All right. And this brings up something else, too. And when we get into the heathen likes to do things like this. Because despite her last name, Vasquez, the one in the white, all right, standing right over top of the her great-great-grandfather's tombstone there, all right, but by all appearances that's an Edomite, all right, but that's a whole nother topic. But these are them, what I'm reading to you from the other article, so you can get a picture of who it's talking about here, all right. The one in the black is the professor. So let's go. Roseanne Baca Garza, a Borderlands historian at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, is one of the few experts on the southern route of freedom, and this is her. It says, we call it the Underground Railroad that traveled through South Texas and into Mexico, but we didn't have a conductor like a Harriet Tubman, and we didn't have a certain station like they did in Philadelphia where they could live and make some money and do whatever. But what we did have down here were pathways that people could follow to get to the Rio Grande. All right. We came to this graveyard because here lie the remains of John Ferdinand Weber and his wife Sylvia Hector. They were an interracial couple that quietly helped black people escape the southwestern extreme of the slave South. Weber was a white settler new to Texas. See what I said? New to Texas, who fell in love with Hector, an enslaved woman. They had 3 children, and he bought their freedom. They homesteaded in the hamlet that now bears his name, Weberville, east of Austin. But Texas was still a slave state, and the suffocating racial codes of antebellum Texas eventually drove the family away to the borderlands, where they bought a ranch. The Webers, along with another interracial abolitionist family here on the river, the Jacksons, were well known in the clandestine grapevine of runaways. So at this point, it turns into a celebration of these abolitionists, all right? And this is what these Edomites like to do. It's their way of patting themselves on the back, all right? So I'm going to skip down. Let's see. Let's see. You know what? Let's just go straight to the scriptures because this goes on for a little while. So let's go straight to it. This is Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 16. Thou art filled with shame for glory. Like I said, more and more of these stories like this are coming out. All right. And it's not good for you. All right. It says, drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. And it is. All right, because you're the one that went out into the world talking about how righteous you were. All right. And now all that's falling apart. And it's to the point where, well, certain places in the world, and I've been overseas, it's not a new thing to hate on America, all right? But a lot of people were blinded, all right, not able to see America for what it really is, because they, drank the Babylon juice or whatever. But now, especially with this so-called pandemic, a lot of people have a lot of spare time on their hands. So what do? They get online, and they have no choice but to explore. And they're finding out. That's another avenue for them to find certain things out. All right. That otherwise they would have been too busy or whatever, whatever. And like I say, it's shaping up. Revelation 17, 15, and 16 verses, all right, talking about they shall hate the whore and burn her with fire. And what do you think that's talking about? That's talking about that's talking about them nukes, all right. In the chapter before at 16, where starting at 12, it's talking about the way being made for the kings of the east and all these things happening in the Middle East, all right, where he's making preparation for this to kick off, this World War III, all right. So the wheels are spinning, my point being, all right. So let's go to another one. Oops. This is Isaiah chapter 47, verse 1. It says, come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. All right. The U.S. enjoyed not being touched. All right. And the amazing thing about that, when you consider that from the time of its inception, let's just use the year that they use, 1776. When you consider that all the wars this country has participated in, both actual wars and through those proxy wars, you're talking just over 20 years of peace. Think about that. In 240 plus years. All right. Only a little over 20 years of peace. Wow. That should tell you a lot right there. That should tell you about the nature of the people that you're dealing with. Wow. Verse 2. It says, take the millstones and grind meal, uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. All right. 3. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, and it is. Yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. That's the Lord. All right. All right. The first time he came as a lamb. When he comes back, he's coming back as a lion. That's not good for you, Esau. That's not good at all. All right. So here it is. You've done all this wickedness. All right. And you have a lot of them. You see certain things online where they're trying to acknowledge their sin. Hey, it ain't working. Too little, too late. Way too late. All right. Let's see. Let's go to Philippians 3. See if I want to use this or not. Yeah. All right. Perfect point. This is Philippians chapter 3, verse 19. It talks about whose end is destruction. All right. Whose God is their belly. Who are we talking about here? We're talking about that covetous man. All right. In fact, let's go to Sirach. Let's see, 10. All right. Here it is. I'll start at 8. This is Sirach chapter 10, verse 8. It says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. 9. Why is earth and ashes proud? There is not a more wicked thing than a covetous man. For such an one setteth his own soul to sale, because while he liveth, he casteth away his bowels. All right. Remember Genesis 25th chapter where it gets into the birth of Esau, or Jacob and Esau, with Esau coming out first. All right. Then you go further down and it talks about how he sold his birthright. Why? Because of what? His hunger, and therefore his lack of integrity. He couldn't hold out for just a little while. All right, so what should this blessing profit me when I'm about to die, or so he thought. He sold his birthright. Wow. And now he's mad. This whole thing has been him trying to get it back. Remember in Genesis 27 and 41 what it says about him waiting for his father Jacob to die, and then he'll kill his brother Jacob, and that's what he's been trying to do ever since. So this conflict, these world events have been centered around the descendants of two brothers, Jacob and Esau, and their descendants. Wow. When you put it in that context. Yep. All right, so for time's sake, I'll drop it there. I'll just poke, because this is just going back and forth interview here. Yeah. More of these things that weren't commonly taught to us in the American school system are coming out now. All right. This is something that should have been common sense. A lot of people just didn't ever think about it. You were always taught that it was from south to north, not south to south, or further south. All right. So, hey, I hope whoever views this is edified. Hey, this is all done, and trying to wake up the remaining hopefully elect. So with that, hey, shalom.